Right, everyone. Evening. My apologies for being a tad late. In terms of the different models of change, one of the things that we learn about change, and often consultants won't tell you this because what consultants do is they arrive with a pre-packaged form and they allow you to follow their steps, their processes, etc. The challenge with change is that you cannot Lego block it into place. You know, the kind of things consultants sometimes will offer would be a Lego block that you just plug in and it fits magically at the top. It depends on so many variables that I think the well, it's exactly how Chelsea do you guys do that? Oh gosh, I better keep quiet then. It's not a Lego block. I think everything is dependent on the situation, and there's so many variables that we can think of. I mean, we see startups needing very different interventions to companies that are performing or going through a slump because of reaching a maturity level in an industry. It really is a concern. So, what we have to do is realize that, as with anything, whether it's leadership, whether it's change, whether it is the way we motivate people, everything is contingent. You must realize that you cannot have pre-packaged notions of what will work. So there are certain givens, obviously, things like having a vision, etc., etc. Those things are non-negotiable. But the reality is there's so many elements that you need to consider. So in terms of change, this kind of situation would determine or would be driven specifically by the kind of resistance that you're encountering. If you're encountering resistance because people don't understand, then you do the education bit. When you want to get buy-in and you want to get people to contribute and make the change live, you have to involve them because people often know a lot more about their own job than anyone else. Sometimes it is about concerns and fears, and you have to step in and almost involve people that would act very similar to the way a therapist would act. And then, yeah, I think negotiation, where it's give and take. The worst ones, manipulation, where you don't tell people the full truth, and then, or it's the nasty stuff of do it or you will lose your job. So, in terms of these change strategies, I think when we look at these elements, first of all, it is to understand that we have these incremental Kaizen type changes, and then you have those radical transformational type changes. So generally, these would be revolutionary, these would be evolutionary, those would be revolutionary. And then, depending on the organization, depending on the culture, depending on the circumstances, you'll have these two alternatives available. So, in terms of the first one, is that you need to make slight improvements. And it often is a bit of Kaizen, it's about continuous improvement. Best way to do it is to get people involved, to do it collaboratively. The second one, the charismatic transformation, often is when we bring in a brand new leader, somebody who arrives, who brings in fresh blood, fresh notions. It's Steve Jobs going back to Apple after he was fired. It is transformation, and the important bit is that because you have a charismatic person, you can involve people because the charisma of an individual, of these new kind leaders, will make a big difference. Yeah, forced evolution. I think this is where we've fallen behind. We've become a little bit lackadaisical. We've become complacent, and employees aren't buying into the change. It is one of those, either we do it or we die. And it's an awful way of describing it. But when I did my last bit of study, went to a company where those exact words were used, guys. And then dictatorial transformation. Yeah, this is where it is a big mess. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work. I think when we look at what Elon Musk has done at this stage, when he inherited Twitter, now X. I think that was a mess. I think the transformation really has destroyed was a decent brand. So it is about the situation, it is about the context, it's about the people, it's about the environment. And so we have this wonderful change kaleidoscope, and you can see the different elements. And what is nice about this is that it is not a Lego block forced onto an organization, but rather it has all these elements, and we need to understand. So when we think of the change context, often the change context is very positive. You have a new innovation, you guys are responsible for the innovation, but the organization isn't kept in step with the innovation. So that context is positive. It could be the COVID context, where it is really unpleasant out there that the organization will be in serious trouble unless we do it. Sorry, guys, while we're talking, I'm just going to plug in my other modem because I see the fiber is messing around again. And serious trouble in terms of not changing and not surviving. So, in terms of the things that we consider, if it's a time thing, if it's a crisis, if it is do or die, you will adopt a particular approach. And often that will involve a very strong leader. If it is a long-term continuous improvement thing, it will be a very different approach. So what happens, it changes the elements. Scope, how much change? Is it the entire organization? Is it a section in the organization? And then in terms of preservation, it is that idea of not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Now, it is a saying that is about 100 years old. What does not throwing the baby out with the bathwater mean? Has anyone heard that saying? It really is a dated saying, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It comes from the early 1900s where we didn't have indoor baths and you had to bring water in a pail and create your own bath, and people would bath in order of dad, mom, children, and you'd all use the same water, and then the last child, the last entity to bath is the poor baby. And then obviously, when you throw the water out, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bath water. Not heard the term before? Oh gosh, it shows you that I am really becoming a geriatric now. So, guys, the essence of it is when you change things, try and keep the good things. It's I think sometimes, when people try and change the organization, they forget about the things that they are really good at. They forget about those things that make them special, and we throw the decent stuff out with the rubbish that we must need to change. Yeah, in terms of diversity, again, guys, we know that modern organizations are diverse, and you have to consider inputs from every single aspect of that diversity spectrum. Otherwise, you could alienate, isolate people in the change. And then the capability. I think really competent people are very, very easy to convince to change. And people who are versatilists are very good at changing. And we'll remember we discussed the concept of a versatilist at the beginning of the year. Or is the organization capable? Have we got the resources? Have we got the structure? Have we got the finances? Have we got the bits in place to make this happen? And then capability, capacity in terms of those resource things, and then readiness. How ready are people to change? Sometimes people aren't struggling enough in terms of the organization's viable so that they would want to change. And then the power. Who do you involve? Who do you exclude? How much autonomy do you give the different departments? Guys, and then in terms of those, you have to look at the change path. And the change path is often that thing that will indicate which aspects of the organization are we going to change, and in what order. When will what happen? because it really is about just having your plans in place. Your change start point. I always tell people that when you look for a change start point, is start with fertile ground. I think often people try and change everywhere and it fails. For me, fertile ground would be that department where people are competent, where people understand what the realities are in the world, where people will make the change work. I think often people will try and change the entire organization. For me, you find that project that will work in that specific area. I don't like the idea of calling it a pilot project because a pilot project, yeah, I don't know. I don't like the term. For me, it's fertile ground. And fertile ground is often in a section where people are competent, where people are willing to work hard, where people understand the realities of the world. If I had to ask yourself, should you need to change aspects of your organization, which would be the fertile ground department? Can I say it's never going to be finance? Sorry, Chels. If you had to find the ideal fertile ground department in terms of finding your change point, if you think of your own organization, which department would be best? HR. That's interesting, Bill, because obviously we would expect that HR will often be where you find your change management specialists. That's an interesting one. In your own organization, what would be the ideal place to start? I wonder if any of you guys are in that ideal place where if there has to be a change, the place to do it in terms of where you want to start is with us. Operations is important, Boyo. Absolutely. I don't want to say it's almost always operations. I think the introduction of a new admin system. One of my third years last night told me that he's overseeing the move away from SAP to Next. Now we know the disaster that SAP was in Spa, and he's now moving away from SAP. So this is a system that governs everything in the organization to Next, which I know is very, very new in terms of those kinds of ERPs, I think they called guys, and then just your change style. Yeah, it really is. Do we need to be directive or collaborative? If it's a massive crisis and you're trying to save the patient, directive here. If we think that we've got a bit of time, you can do that. And then the change target. If we think, for example, of what's going to happen in the Department of Home Affairs, we've had so many ministers of home affairs, and every single one of them has failed. And the truth is, it's a culture thing. How do we define organization culture? What is the organization culture? For me, it's the personality of an organization. The moment someone says these words, you know that they talk about culture. And it really is. That's the way we do things around here. The moment a person says that, you know that they're talking about culture. That's the way we do things around here. It's those sort of unwritten rules that guide interactions, behaviors. I mean, you can also even include the way we dress, the way we interact with each other, etc. Guys, and then the next one there, change levers. I think the reality is what will make the change. So often when we change, we try and change people, we try and change systems, we try and change culture, because those are generally the elements that need updating, guys, and then the change roles as to who is going to do what. And please don't ever underestimate the role of catalyst, change catalyst. please also don't ever underestimate the role of change champion. A change champion is that one person that will always talk good and convince other people of the need for change. My apologies for